All right, here we go. Another square dance callers talk. Tonight, I've got Renee Rudd. She's going to tell you about her life in square dancing and everything about her. How are you, Renee?
I am fine, but I have to correct you. It's rude, not Rudd. I know
Rude.
that
Okay.
nobody wants to say rude because it sounds rude, but that is
Okay.
how it's pronounced.
Rude. Okay. I got you. Well, we have never had the opportunity. I don't know that we've ever met before in person.
Not that I know of.
Okay. Just tell us where you live, first of all.
I live in a little town in Washington State called Yacolt,
Hmm.
not Yakima, but Yacolt. And I live on the property that I grew up on. I actually lived my whole married life in Oregon City. But when my mom got older and needed some help, um, I was driving 50 miles one way to come help her at least once a week. And so we decided that we would just buy the property and move up here. So we live in Yacolt with my mom. We live on 5 acres. My parents originally bought 40 acres here in 1960. Let's see, what would it have been? Between 63 and 65. I was 12, but don't ask me to do math in my head.
Okay.
And they gradually subdivided the land out. My sister lives on the original 5 with the house that we grew up in, and her daughter lives on that 5 too, and her family. And then my husband and I and my mom live on the next 5. My brother used to live on the next 10, but he sold that. So we just kind of live here in a family compound. And we're right at the end of a road out in the country. There's Weyerhaeuser Forest behind us. So we're kind of isolated, but I love it. I love being here where I grew up and where all my childhood memories are.
That's fantastic. We talked to my wife and I. We've talked for years. We've been married a long time. Whether we wanted to retire to a beach or to the mountains or
Mm-hmm.
to like what you're describing.
Mm-hmm.
For the longest time it was mountains, but we're from Savannah and we want to get back to the water, so we're probably going to do that in
Yeah,
a couple of years. So
the beach.
that
Yep.
sounds like a great setup you got there. A pretty decent sized family.
Um, you mean that I grew up with?
Hmm.
I grew up with 3 siblings. I have a brother and 2 sisters that I grew up with. I actually have other siblings, half siblings that are kind of scattered all over the United States. My biological father was sort of a rascal.
Okay.
So when I joined Ancestry, I discovered all kinds of relatives I didn't know I had.
I got you. So I see a lot on the internet, and I do a lot of music searching and things like that, and that's how I came across. I don't know if I think I'd seen some YouTube stuff you've done before, but I was listening to some sharpshooter stuff, and I heard some of your music, and I was like, "Why don't I've never met her. Let me ask her and see if she wants to do a podcast." So let's talk about you. When did you start square dancing?
My husband and I started square dancing in 2001.
Okay.
That's when we first began.
And how'd you begin that? What, somebody invite you or what?
Well, I have to tell you, I had always been interested in square dancing. And for years, my husband and I would camp up on Mount Hood at a campground called Mount Hood RV Village. And I think it was in September for the long holiday, there was always a camp and dance up there. And um, I drag him over to where they were dancing every year and press my nose against the window and say, "Doesn't this look like fun?" And he'd say, "Absolutely not." And then a girl that I sang with at church, I belonged to a trio with her, and her parents square danced, and they invited her and her husband to take lessons in Milwaukee, Oregon. And if if she and her husband invited another couple for their second lesson, they could get that one free as well. So she asked us to come. So I literally dragged my husband, absolutely kicking and screaming, to lessons.
I know.
And he was determined he wasn't going to like it, and he actually loves it. So I was lucky.
Yeah, no, I hear that story a lot. It's usually now you went on to become a caller, but typically the story goes is the wife or a girlfriend brings the guy and does not want to go, and the guy's the one that makes them keep going back after they get into it. The wife is the one's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So you got it good that you both enjoyed it so much.
Yep.
So you started dancing in 2001. How high of a level do you dance to?
We have danced through but we A1 and 2, but we just found that we enjoyed um, basic mainstream plus more than we enjoyed the A dancing. So even though we have danced that level, we didn't, neither one of us really wanted to go any further in our dancing.
Mhm.
And we basically dance, up through plus.
Okay. Outstanding. And I ask everybody, when we get to this part, at some point, something gave you the reason to want to call. Was it a call, or when did you decide you wanted to try and get on a microphone?
Well, getting on the microphone and calling in for me are two different things because I have sung my entire life. So when we started dancing, our caller, his name is Les Seeley, and he's a fairly popular caller here in our local area. And when he discovered that I could sing, he asked if I would come and just kind of do backup singing with him. So like the doo-wop girl. And after maybe a year and a half of that, I thought, well, maybe I should learn some figures, just memorize some figures. And so I did that for all the years that I called with Les, and I call it calling, but I wasn't,
Right.
I had no idea I had no idea where the dancers were going to end up and what I was accomplishing with the calls I was giving.
Okay.
So the whole time that I was calling with Les, it was basically just learning lyrics because that's all, I just didn't understand it. But I called with him until he and his wife moved to Arizona, and that was probably 6 years ago.
Okay.
And of course, fairly shortly after that, COVID hit,
Mhm.
and nobody was dancing. And then after COVID happened, Daryl Clendenin started doing Zoom caller classes. And I know Daryl, he's from this area. And so I started going to those classes, and I mean, it was like a whole new world opened up to me. I began to understand what I was saying was going to result in this happening, and I couldn't call this because that would happen. And I can't thank Daryl enough for what he's doing for callers all over, because the Zoom classes are not just for locals, but fortunately for me, he is local to me. And so he became the caller for the nearest club to where we live now, which is Columbia River Dancers in Battleground, Washington, just north of Vancouver. And that's the club that we had decided to join. So he is now my caller. And so he utilizes me when he can, and he doesn't utilize me. He gives me the opportunity to be on stage and have mic time. And he and I are kind of co-teaching the classes that Columbia River is doing. In fact, we've got a class this afternoon, and we kind of alternate between basic class and then a plus refresher. And then when that's over, we go to a plus class and basic mainstream refresher. And so our new basic class will start in January, second week in January on Sundays.
Okay.
So I'm really fortunate.
How long have you been teaching?
I used to teach with Les.
Okay.
And so for several years, I've actually been teaching. If he couldn't be there, I would take over the class. I could teach fine, but I didn't really retain what I was teaching the class as to where this move I mean, I knew where it begins, but not where it actually ends and what can I do from there.
Gotcha.
So which sounds weird if I was teaching, because I need to know that, but I actually have taught for several years, if you include the teaching that I've done with Les.
So, and Daryl, I've had the opportunity to meet him a time or two, not very often because he is as far away as he is, but at conventions or that type of thing, I've heard him speak. Also, have you done any other kind of schools or anything in the years you've been calling?
I have not, mainly because I didn't feel like I could afford it when we were, just working and trying to make ends meet with our family.
Sure.
And right now, as far as going anywhere else for schools, I'm pretty tied down with the care of my mom.
Gotcha.
So I can get away maybe for a night here and there, but
well,
if I had to do anything further, I'd have to make arrangements with my sister, and it would be a hassle. So
well, Daryl's an awesome resource, so you got that going for you. So
he
you
is.
got a
Yep.
really good mentor there.
He is a wealth of knowledge, I'll tell you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And he's a very good teacher. He's also very intimidating.
Is he?
I'll say that with love. With
I
the first few years that I knew Daryl, because I knew him ever since we began dancing, because he was a caller in our local area. And Les, our club caller, Les Seeley, belonged to a group, a caller group called The Crew. And it was Randy Dibble and Daryl and Les and Bill Helms and Jim Hattrick. And those, I don't know if you know any of those other names, but
don't.
they are all fantastic callers and have really good voices. I mean, we're blessed in this area to have callers that can sing well and are extremely good callers. And every time they, occasionally I would get asked to step in and sing with that group, just kind of as a, just singing, doing harmonies. And I'll tell you, I was so intimidated by Daryl, but the more I know him, the more I love him. He's really a sweetheart.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been fortunate in this area in general, and with going to conventions, I've been to a lot of caller schools, and I get something out of every one. With a lot of, and I've got to meet a lot of people just in
Mhm.
general from that. And I've never had a chance to do one with Daryl. I'm looking forward to that at some point down the road. But I know what you mean. A couple of people that I've always looked up to, and I've gone to the schools, and I know them personally now. Super intimidating, and still to this day, if and I say his name all the time. If Tony Oxendine walks into
Oh
someone's
yeah,
call, and I'm just like, oh no, oh, and it's just you just get nervous. You're not
yeah,
going to get around that. And then 30 minutes later, after the dance, me and Tony will be sitting down having a drink, laughing and talking, telling stories.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's always going to be people like that. But it helps to push you,
Oh,
because
it does.
you want
Yeah,
to do well.
yeah.
So that's awesome. Um, have you been to any conventions? You done any traveling with your call or anything? I know you currently you can't do it, but
Um, Not so much. Well, I used to with Les. I did a lot of local distant calling.
okay.
Like up by the Seattle area, down in Bend, Oregon, that area. So, not really, really local, but not terribly far away either. And Les and I would always call dances together anywhere he went for the last several years of his calling. We almost always went with him, and I was always part of the dance and on stage with him for most of the time. So, but I will tell you that when we started square dancing, since then we have traveled more than we ever traveled in our whole lives. I mean, we've been to Kentucky to the convention, we've been on cruises, square dance cruises, we've been to California to a convention, we've been just all over, and I've loved every minute of it. It's been so cool being able to travel, and our destination is dancing. How much more fun could you have than that? We've really loved every minute of it.
That's awesome. I didn't know until, and I forget what year it was, 6 or 7 years ago, when the national convention. I'd never been to one until they came to Atlanta, and it was 3 miles from where I live, so I couldn't not go to that.
Yeah,
And and you get to see so many people from all over coming in, and people you only see on YouTube, Facebook, whatever.
yeah,
And so I told my wife, I was like, we've got to go. We've got to go to every national convention that we can possibly make, just because you make friendships that you never get to see the people because they live in Oregon, they live in
right.
Washington, they live in California, and we're in Georgia. Um, so that's awesome. You get to call on some of those stages and all that. And you talk about horrifying is when you step up there and there's 30 squares of, and you see one couple that that's about 12
Right.
squares away, and you're like, there's no way I'm going to be able to watch them.
Yep.
And, so that can be a little intimidating, but I really enjoy that kind of stuff now.
One of my favorite parts of being able to call it at conventions is being able to call with the live band, the
Oh,
Ghost Riders. I mean, that is so much fun. I absolutely loved every minute that we got to do that.
that's awesome. I love calling with the Ghost Riders. Oh my gosh, that's good stuff. Um, so when's the last time you called with the Ghost Riders? What was your last convention?
Oh man, it's been years ago. I'm going to have to say, I think the last time that I actually got to call with the Ghost Riders on stage was in Kentucky at
Okay.
the convention when it was in Kentucky, and that was years ago.
Yeah.
and we were part of a group um, called the River City Writers at that point. I don't know if you've ever seen them at any of the conventions. They try to go to a lot of the conventions, but it's a plus group that dances on horses, not real horses,
Oh wow,
but
no, I have not seen
fabricated horses. And that was a lot of fun too, being able to do that. And we danced. I think we were a 6 couple square when we did that.
it.
So
Now you were saying you were singing all your life, and like I said, I thought about inviting you to do this because of some of the recordings I'd heard you've done. Tell me about some of your recordings, who you've recorded with, and some of your songs that you like. I'm sure you like them
well,
all, but some of your favorites.
I do have favorites. The first song I recorded was for Fine Tune Goldwing, and it was with Rick Hampton had called me. I think he actually called me, and he had seen some of the YouTube videos that my husband had posted of me calling and singing. And he asked if I would do a song. And so the first song that I did was Better When I'm Dancing, or Better When You're Dancing. And that song has done really well for the label. I see that it's still in the number part of, I don't remember which number it is now, but it's part of the top 10 for all time for that label. And most of the recordings I've done are for Fine Tune Goldwing. She did ask me to do a recording. I recorded Fallen for Shauna, and that's one of my favorites, is that recording. And recently, Bob Elling has had me recording several songs for him, some just to do the female key. And I think a couple of them are songs that have not been done before. But anyway, so I've recorded for the 3 labels, Riverboat, Chic, and Fine Tune Goldwing. And the other favorite song of mine, what is it called? I think it's a Sharpshooter. I'm gonna have to look it up. So give me just a
Okay,
second. Ask me another question and I'll come back to,
okay,
to that.
okay. Well, while you're looking for that, are there any songs out there that you would like to record that you would like to hear as a square dance song? And that kind of goes to, if you're not listening to square dance, doing square dance stuff, what's your favorite genre? What kind of music do you listen to?
I like most kinds of music. I listen to quite a bit of Christian because I sing at church
Okay.
often, and so I'm always trying to find new music in the Christian genre. Gospel, well, good old Southern gospel. I love that just because of the harmonies that I can add to the tracks. And usually when I'm singing at church, I will buy a karaoke version of something and then we'll record harmonies
Okay.
if it's something that's conducive to harmonies. And country, western, 70s and 80s rock. I love the old 40s music with the inverted harmonies. So the only music that I really don't like is classical.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I'm just trying to pull up my name here to find this song.
You have any and singing all your life, do you have any uh favorite singers or groups or anything like that as far as any type of music?
I like all of, well, can't say all, but a lot of the old, from my era, teenage and early adulthood music. In the country western genre, I'd say I really like Alabama,
Okay.
and that style of music.
Mhm.
For my teenage years and early adult years in the rock genre, I love Boston and Mamas and the Papas. I love Karen Carpenter just because I can sing a lot of what she sings. I think is why. Well, she's a great singer, so I love listening to her. But I do really like Karen Carpenter. Let's see, that song is "What About Us."
What about us? Okay.
Uh, I think that's one of my favorite ones that I've done for Fine Tune Goldwing. Recently, Tell Me Lies and Mama's Broken Heart are, I think, my 2 most recents, and I really like those 2 as well. And I think that they're working on Budapest, and that's a
Oh, wow,
kind
nice.
of a pop. I think they're working on Budapest for me to put out in a
Oh, that would be
month or
great.
so. So
I was yesterday, my wife and I were riding around and Budapest came on and I was like, I'd like to do that. That's a good song.
yeah,
I just didn't know how it would transfer over to square dance because I
yeah,
don't have that ability. If I come up with an idea, I'll go to Tony or Ted or somebody like
yeah,
that and say, "What do you think?" And they'll say, "Yeah, no, whatever." Okay, we'll go from there.
yeah. I find myself listening to the timing and I'll count everything. I'm always counting how many beats are in this song. How many beats in each section are in this song. So I think that that's, as somebody who has to do with the recording end of it and as a caller, I think that's something that probably everybody that's in that position does, is listens to music they like and tries to figure out, are these gonna, would these work? So, and I'll suggest things to Rick and he'll go, nah.
I get a lot more no's. That's not going to work. When I talk to some of them, they're like, "No, no." But
Yeah.
we've got a real good one. I'm going to go out in February to New Hampshire, February or March, I forget, and I'm going to record one that I'm looking forward to. It hasn't been done
Oh,
before, so I'm looking forward to that. That's what it was. I was listening to Mama's Broken Heart
yeah.
on Music for Callers on uh, the label
Yeah.
Sharpshooter, and I was like, yeah, and so then I started looking on YouTube and I found some more of your stuff. That's what kind of led me that way. Outstanding.
Yeah.
Now, and as far as the calling goes, we have to do patter at some point. You have to do it. How often do you work on patter and choreography? I mean, I know you're teaching, but outside of that, do you have time to sit down and just do it on your own?
I work on patter all the time. And one thing that I've learned from Daryl is to be able to see in my mind, for the most part, where I am with whatever I call. So if I can concentrate when I'm in front of dancers, because that's not always easy, I can usually go through patter pretty well and get everybody home without relying on sight. Sight calling, like you said, it depends on if it's people that I know really well. If it's people that decide they're going to dance with somebody else or swap in the middle of in the middle of the tip,
Mm.
that sometimes throws me, but I can usually figure it out. If it's people that I'm not real familiar with, a couple weeks ago I called two dances away from here that I wasn't familiar with the people for the most part, and so if they're dressed alike, if they're in club clothes, that's an issue. But I like all callers, and especially newer. Even though I've called for a long time, I consider myself a new caller. Like all new callers, I will mess up. Is this my number one couple, or is my primary couple, or is this my secondary couple?
Sure.
And get them crossed. But those are all lessons that once it happens, you say to yourself, well, I can't do that again. I got to figure out who these people are. So
Now, do you since you are newer, you've been calling a few years now and everything else, and you've got really good teachers, mentors. How do you normally go in? Do you do a lot of memory? Do you look for a corner? What is your process when you're calling?
I don't write things down. I don't write down my corners. Maybe I should. But if I'm with a group that I don't know real well, I will try to pick somebody that is dressed alike as a couple,
Sure.
so that I know that's going to be my primary couple. And then for my secondary couple, I'll think, well, blonde hair and purple shoes, something that gives me a clue as to who they are and differentiates them from the rest of the people in the square.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing I do. I also will just do something, a really simple figure, square through, four, swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, pass through, touch, quarter, scoot back, something that I know where they're going to be and I can see how they're dancing, and gradually add other things in to see how the floor takes it and kind of what level the floor dances at. I know that a lot of callers like to present a challenge. For me, being a quote newer caller, I don't think that challenging the dancers is what I should be doing. I should be allowing them to succeed in the dance, and then they'll enjoy what I'm presenting to them. And there's time for trying to be challenging later on when I'm more comfortable with being challenging. So
I agree. There's when, like I was telling you, I have two clubs. I'm fortunate enough to have two clubs, and I know all the members obviously pretty well, and so I can go in there and try things that I wouldn't do at a club inviting me to call for them, that I don't know
yeah,
every single person there, because my memory is not that good. If I don't write a corner down or have something that stands out, like one guy that's 6'3" wearing a cowboy hat,
yeah,
I can't just go the guy wearing the sports coat, because I'm in trouble if I go that route.
yeah.
I write a lot of corners down. I'll do that just on a
Mm.
little scrap piece of paper, and that kind of helps me through it. But yeah, that's great that you can actually look out and put people together like that, and it is, and that's a great beginning. With the exception of my clubs, every time somebody invites me to call, say in South Carolina, if I go over there and I don't know a bunch of people, that first tip, even if I know some of them, it's going to be as basic as you can get,
Mhm.
because I want to see if they can do something from I may not even go half sashayed in the first tip, but just can they spin the top,
Mhm.
because before COVID, everybody could relay the deucey plus
Yep,
spin the
yep,
top. And after 2 years of COVID, I realized I'd forgotten a couple calls.
yeah,
One, I was calling a dance one night. This was 2023 ish, I guess. And for the life of me, I could not remember the word coordinate. I kept putting them in position. I was like, you know that one where everybody moves up. You know that one, and I couldn't. And I had to go back and find it. The point I'm getting at is the dancers, but I work on choreography every day, every other day, minimum.
yeah,
Dancers, some of them aren't dancing every other day.
right,
They're dancing every 2 weeks, maybe some of them.
right,
So that relay the deucey, that coordinate, that spin the top is gone.
yeah,
And so that's why it's gotten a little rough in some spots. So it's something you have to work at.
yeah.
So you've got a great advantage knowing that you go in there with your mainstream basic stuff and kind of feel them out.
I did the exact same thing you were talking about at a dance about 2 weeks ago. Daryl couldn't be at the dance because he was under the weather. And so I took the dance for him in the first half hours plus. And I could not for the life of me remember the call, spin chain and exchange the gears.
Mm-hmm.
And I got him in position and I said, I can't remember what I'm trying to call. I can't think of the name of this move. And somebody from the floor said, spin chain and exchange the gears. I went, oh, you guys are so good. So they did it and it was just fine. But I did exactly the same thing you did. Could not remember the name of that call.
At that point, I went almost a solid year during that time that I didn't call at all. I did a lot at my house, and I thought, boy, I'm going to be ready when this is over. I'm going
Yeah.
to memorize all this stuff. That never works. So you forget things. Your timing's going to be off, but as callers, we work at it, every day, every other day.
Yeah.
So it came back, but still, I'll go to some places and call relay the deucey, and I'll break 3 squares down. Just nothing's hard about it. It's just that I
Yeah.
don't do it all the time.
That's
So
right.
yeah, it's something you have to do with choreography. It's practice every single day. Think about it every day.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Renee. What do you have plan? I know that you a caregiver and everything else. What do you have any plans going forward? Any conventions or anything you're planning on going to?
Um, there's going to be a convention in Spokane. I don't remember, is it this coming year or in 2 years? I don't remember. And I'd like to be able to go to that one because I mean, it's a ways away. It's not like drive there and come back home that night, but I'm sure that it'll be close enough that I can get my sister or my husband's cousin to be here with my mom while we go to that. I would like to go to that convention. That's the only one that really is in my thoughts. Every year that they see, what is it that we have out here on this side of the Rockies? We have something happen. I can't think what it's called. If a big dance, a big convention is on the east side of the Rockies, then we have something on this side, and I
Um,
can't think what it is, but it's not every year, obviously, but when those roll around, they're often in like Pendleton, Oregon, and we like to go to those. That's not that far away either.
I guess being it's in Louisiana this year, there's no national not going to the national convention.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's
far away.
that's a haul for me, and I'm only 3 states over, I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a long run. So
And we always have a, it's not a convention, but it's a our local um, festivals, a local like statewide or area wide festival where we'll have people from, all a lot of the local states and even some from far away come to some of the festivals that we have in Oregon. They're usually held in Eugene. They're called Midwinter Festival.
okay.
And we usually try to go to the Midwinter festivals. Um, they're in January, and I'm not sure we're going to make this one this year. We're going to try to at least go for the day, if not for a couple days. So
I don't know without looking. When I put these podcasts out, I put them on YouTube and through Facebook and everything else. And I don't. There's a couple of groups, clubs that I follow or I'm a member of in Oregon. Just because,
mhm.
and every time I will get likes or comments or something from the Oregon ones that I put out, which I was like, okay, people up there are watching. That's good. So, um,
Yeah,
so hopefully they'll see this for sure, and that'd be great.
I watch your podcast. So,
Oh, thank
and
you.
I'd never heard of you till I don't remember how I saw that you had must have been on one of the Facebook,
Mhm.
caller or square dance pages that I saw that you had a podcast. And I thought, well, this will be a way to get to know some of the callers that I'd like to know and don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
So
When we talked beforehand, before we recorded, that's part of it. When I have y'all come on, it's really to talk about yourself. And I've had everything from somebody 2 years in to, you know, and again, I've had Wade Driver, Tony Oxendine, these guys that literally their whole life, um,
yeah,
you
from the
know,
time they were
from
kids.
childhood to college, they've been calling, and that's all they've done. Just huge in the square dance world. So, and it was for other callers, and I find that at some of the conventions I've gone to, I'll have dancers come up to me and they say, "Hey, I really like listening to that podcast," and
Yeah,
or they call me the podcast guy, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess I'll be the podcast guy. And but yeah, it was so that if you don't get to travel a lot, for whatever reason that be, so
yeah,
people outside of that can get to know you.
yeah.
But you have got to do some traveling. That's good, and you still got time to travel. That's for sure.
I also belong to a Zoom group on Monday afternoons called the Lemonators. And they decided when COVID started, I think Cherie Angus was the one who, I think she lives in Colorado. She's the one that started it. And she and I had become friends on Facebook. And she asked me if I was interested in joining this group that was going to start meeting just in Zoom and dancing
Right.
and calling. And I couldn't see how that could possibly work. And I said, no, I was busy. I was still working at the time, I think. And about a year ago, I was invited to join the group again, and it is so much fun. And I've gotten to meet so many people. That's how I met Bob Elling from Riverboat Records,
Okay.
and just new callers, experienced callers, callers from the UK. Just it's really been fun being on that group too, and getting to meet other dancers and callers, and seeing that people do dance on Zoom.
Yeah, yeah. I've
Figure it
seen
out,
a
but they
lot of.
do.
I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, people putting that
Yeah,
out, doing either two couples or four couples. Um,
yeah,
I tried. I don't have the right equipment, microphones and all. I tried to do a Zoom dance a couple of years ago, and
yeah.
did not go well. And this was a group of people that were at their dance hall, but we were doing it.
Oh,
That
okay.
was on Zoom, so I was just on the screen, but the timing wasn't right, and the squares start spreading out, so I can't see these two couples,
Right. Yeah.
and so I know people get away with it and they do it well. There's a handful that still do it.
Yeah.
But
And this group isn't exactly like that. There's one couple that actually dances together in their
okay.
home, And
Okay.
everybody else is just single people just executing the moves.
I've seen that too.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's not, I don't have to worry about trying to call patter to the, to a group that I can only see half the square.
Okay.
So it's okay.
Well, before we go, let's a little bit more about you. What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie, you'll laugh. Probably my favorite movie is White Christmas. Two of them, White
Fantastic.
Christmas and It's a Wonderful Life. I love the old movies.
Of
So they're
course,
my favorite.
since Christmas just passed, we've watched both of them. Well, huge.
Yep.
I've known about those. White Christmas, we just started that one a couple years ago, watching my wife and I
Yeah.
love it.
Oh, I do too.
The old
Love the
sets and
music, the
everything,
dancing. Yep.
there's no green screen. They had the
Oh,
sets that are built, and when they open the barn doors, you can tell that it's just drawings back there, but it's just awesome. That's
oh
fantastic.
yeah, I love it.
What if you're not square dance calling, what do you like to do for fun? You still ride horses? You were mentioning horses earlier. What do you do?
I haven't had horses since I was a kid.
Okay.
But the horses that I had mentioned were the pretend horses that we built, that
Okay.
we
I got
that
you.
we sat on and pretended to ride. But I knit, I crochet, have spinning wheels, and I spin my own fiber to make yarns. Um, I garden. I love cooking, canning. I guess just all the homemakery type things I love to do.
Before we go, and I ask everybody this: if you had is there a place that you would like to call that some point in your life you'd like to just as a bucket list thing? Can you call
Absolutely, Australia.
Australia? Very nice. Okay.
Yep. In Daryl's Monday night classes, there are a couple people from Australia, and one of them came out here this summer, and she stayed with us for I think it was 3 days, and we had so much fun getting to know her and listening to her accent. I love her accent, and talking about square dancing in Australia, and it's different, a little bit different. They do things a little bit differently. And Australia has always been on my bucket list to do, and Australia and New Zealand. So I would love to be able to go to Australia and actually be involved in square dancing there while I was there.
I've talked to a couple guys. I've had the opportunity to meet a couple at conventions,
Mm-hmm.
callers, and yeah, that'd be a fantastic place.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long way from me. Obviously, it's not as far for you, about 5 hours closer, but
It's still a long ways.
that's still a haul down there. It sure is. The furthest I've ever gone, we went to Japan one time, not to call, to see my son who was in the Air Force then,
Uh,
and that was from LA. That was 14 hours,
oh wow.
and
Yeah.
it was 5 from Atlanta to I think so. We were all in about 19 hours on a plane in a day, and boy, that's a long haul.
It is, and I am not a good flyer. I hate flying. I'm petrified of flying. And I think it was when I was probably in my late 30s, I went to New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, on a mission trip, and we were gone for a little over 2 weeks. And we flew to Australia and then to over to New Guinea. And on the way back, and that was 17 hours
Wow.
over the ocean, where you will die if you crash. Um, and when we came back, we stopped in Australia for 3 days, and the first day we went to the Great Barrier Reef and snorkeled.
Nice.
And while we were snorkeling, I think it was 2 hours out to the reef. And while we were snorkeling, a little storm came up, a little squall, and I didn't realize it, but I was being tossed in the water,
Mhm.
not knowing it, and I got seasick. And so did my girlfriend that was with me. And I was so sick on the way back, and it took us 5 hours to get back. And the boat, literally, the deck of the boat was dipping into the water because it was just a really bad
Yeah.
storm. And I was throwing up the entire time. And for some reason, that's the only time I've ever been motion sick. And it lasted the other 2 days that I was there.
Hmm.
So I feel like I didn't get to go to Australia because I barely have any memory of anything but
Okay.
being sick on that boat.
Yeah. Have you done a lot of snorkeling other than that, or that was just a one-time deal?
The only other the only other time I snorkeled was in Hawaii. And I was with my sister, and you won't believe this, but a fish actually, I had a pink bikini on that tied, had ties in the back and at the sides of my hips. And a fish actually nibbled on those strings and untied my bikini.
Wow.
That was my other snorkeling experience.
Very nice. Okay. And we had the opportunity when we were in Hawaii 5 years ago. We did some snorkeling as a part of the cruise. Phenomenal. I've never seen
Oh,
water
it's
that
beautiful.
clear.
Yeah.
It's just, growing up on the East Coast like I have with the Atlantic Ocean, it's nice. There are some
Yeah.
clear spots, I guess, but in Savannah, the northern part of Florida, it's just green.
Yeah.
Visibility is a half a foot, maybe. You're not
Oh,
seeing
really?
anything. Yeah, unless you go way out, but you're not, off the beaches.
Yeah.
Hawaii, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And you can see, it seems like you can see 200 yards underwater.
Oh, yeah.
Just amazing.
Yeah, the water on the Great Barrier Reef and the coral. I cannot tell you how beautiful that coral reef and the fish that were there were. I mean, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
I'll
It
have,
was really beautiful.
I'll have to do that at some point. Hopefully, I'll call, see if I can get down to Australia. We'll see.
Get yourself an invite.
Yeah, yeah. I'll talk to Jared or or Steve Turner, one of those guys, see if I can come down
Yeah.
and spend a couple days. Renee, it's been a pleasure doing this. Would love to do it again. I'm gonna get to a point. I think this will be number 87 of the
Wow.
podcast I've done. I thought that I was gonna get to 100, and then I'm gonna start. I want to go back and talk to some people. So 6, 8 months from now, let me know what you've been doing. I know you're teaching class. You got a class this afternoon, where you are. So
Yep.
I'll let you go to that. But would really love to talk to you some more, talk more about snorkeling. I know you've only got those two, but and see what you got going in the future. That'd be awesome. Renee, thanks
And
for
how
joining
you're
me.
doing in retirement.
Yeah, yeah, I'll tell you all about it. We got some
Yep.
plans coming up, and I've got Caller Lab convention coming up in a couple of months in South Carolina, which is 2 hours from me. That's convenient. The Nationals in Louisiana. We got a cruise next year to go on, so looking forward to all that. Renee,
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure meeting you. Hopefully,
It's
we'll
been a
get to run
pleasure
into
meeting.
each other in person at some point.
I
But
hope so.
maybe in Australia, we'll figure out a way for us all to go down there and call it
We'll
off.
have to do that. All
Renee,
right. Thank you so much, Charles.
absolutely. I'll talk to you again. Talk to
All
you.
right. Bye-bye.